Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes, the meticulously dressed Gary Gomes, and I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology, its implications for your life, and also the life of uh, others around the world. So, if you would like to reach me for a reading or for lessons, please contact me at 508 525 0001, or you can email me at Gary Gomes G. I'm sorry, that's Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. That's my name all run together, the letter G added at gmail.com. So, you can text or call me at the phone number, by the way. I'm also on WhatsApp, so if you have a connection to that particular service, you can text me there. The so this is my really going on my 36th year as an astrologer, and I wanted to discuss um, what's going on in the world economically and also what's going on in the world in terms of your personal lives and where I expect to see the action happening in terms of astrocartography, which is a system I certainly didn't invent, and but it's a very accurate system to see where activities are happening. So last week I was dithering all over the place trying to find Japan's birth information in my computer, and it's not there. So today, being the diligent little person that I am, I looked up Japan's birth information so we can look at that. And I want to look at it, Japan, China, and India, just because they're such large components of the world economy, and maybe look at the U.S. chart just a little bit. And we're going to put this in a larger context by looking at where the planets are today, right at this very moment we're speaking. So let me pull up that chart first. So, one second. Now, sometimes when I go off this particular screen and I try to upload it, there is a bit of black that shows on the screen. I haven't disappeared. It's just that the link has to um, take hold with Zoom, and thankfully, it did that time. So this is Japan's birth chart. We're going to get back to that in a second. We're not going to go there right now. Oops, if we can. Sometimes it does these very odd things. Let me see if I can get it to do what I want it to do. So, so if you'll be patient with me just for a second. Okay. Nope. All right. So let me just do this. Now I try. So sometimes the screens lock. I don't know why. Let me just pull this out and down again. And I'm going to change the share to the other chart. All right. So I have the current chart right now. And thankfully, this is something I've been waiting for personally for a while. Um, Venus is in Libra, and I'm not sure you can see me, so let me just see if I can pull myself up. I'm going to stop the share again. And I'm going to start the share again. This is, close this one. See if I can close this one down. All right, this one will take long. So you may be seeing a black screen right now. I'm going to try to fix that. Screen sharing. I don't want to be on this page. Sorry, folks. Let's see if I can share the screen. This might do it one more time for luck. Okay, so share, share the screen. All right, now it's sharing, thank God. Okay, sorry about that. Sometimes the programs and Zoom gets glitchy. Sometimes it's my fault and I don't realize it. And I apologize to you if it was my fault. The So this is the astrological chart for where we are right now at this very minute. So um, you probably noticed a lot of angry and punitive rhetoric over the past month or so. And when I say punitive, it's essentially like, you're not my friend, you'll never be my friend, I hate you, I wish you were gone. Okay. And that was primarily caused by Venus in its debilitation sign of Virgo. A lot of the anger also came because Mars and Mercury were in Libra, which is Venus's sign. And that's been going on for roughly about a month or so as well. So that Mercury-Mars conjunction is kind of an interesting phenomenon. It is an extraordinarily political conjunction. We're definitely in a political season right now. Elections are a few days away, right? So that particular combination, and I may look at Mamdani's chart in New York. I'll see if I can pull that up for you guys, but um, I'm not sure if that's going to make be as big a demarcation line in the sand as a lot of people are claiming it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to change. Certainly, New York City is an important city, but I don't know if it's going to change the face of American politics as much as some people hope or fear it will. It will. So let's go back here because there has been a tendency over the past few years for more and more of the larger cities to become more and more um, socialist or left-leaning. And so that's sort of like, this may be the peak of the trend, not the start of a trend. Okay. And it's also possible because Mamdani's showing uh, a 40%, something like his numbers have slipped. It doesn't mean he's going to lose, but his numbers have slipped. So he's really only got 40% of the vote right now, according to recent polls. Again, like I said, that doesn't mean he's going to lose, but it does indicate that more people are considering other options than this fellow. But again, I'm not really as frightened as of this individual getting in office. I just think, how do I say this without sounding smug or superior? I guess I can. Um, I just think um, people have strong ideals when they're young, and as they tend to get older, they start to see whether or not those ideals can be realized. So uh, it doesn't mean so. When I was much younger, I was much more a believer in in systems like that. As I got older, I saw what the potential cost could be. And make no mistake, I worked for government for many years. I was a beneficiary of a lot of social programs, a lot of social um, um, program activities and social program um, administrations. I have nothing against social programs, uh, but there is a problem when you start promising too much. So, all right, so that's just a little aside. My apologies for taking up your time with that. All right, so we have a nice Sun-Venus conjunction in Libra, which I've been waiting for personally for a long time because Venus is a very important planet for my chart. And over the past month or so, I've just been like working kind of relentlessly and sick and all this other stuff. And so the planets will affect an astrologer too. It's not just you. Uh, the other thing is we have that Mars-Mercury conjunction. As I said, this is a political combination. We have a Capricorn rising sign. Saturn's in the third house. So that indicates an effort to slow down our um, efforts, to be more cautious in our efforts. The Saturn Moon conjunction, though, is actually Saturn and Moon. I'll throw Neptune in for good measure. Saturn and Neptune together tend to pull back unrealistic expectations. So that Saturn Neptune combination. So let's say we've been dreamy and kind of all over the place with our goals. Uh, this will tend to make it a little bit more practically oriented, and the Saturn moon also tends to make us rest for a couple of days. So that's probably a good thing. Okay. Now, one thing again I'm going to point out about this chart, which I believe I pointed out last week, is that virtually every single planet in this chart is weak by rulership, by conjunction, I'm sorry, by placement in the chart. So Jupiter's at 48 minutes of Cancer. So Jupiter's in its exalted sign. It's in its strongest sign. It hits its maximum exaltation in a few degrees. However, it's not going to proceed very far beyond this point. So this can make us a little bit more optimistic, a little bit. And again, one negative part about Jupiter is it can make us more dogmatic, more tied to our ideological systems. That's something I've noticed through the years. It's not something that a lot of people talk about, and also it tends to make us a little bit more patriotic and also a little bit more ready to go to war because Jupiter rules the sign connected, at least from my perspective, connected with war, and that's Sagittarius because of Mula Nakshatra being the first 13 degrees. That's a destructive nakshatra. Okay. Jupiter is also in the eighth house. I'm sorry, in the seventh house from this chart. So it can bring good business partnerships to people. It can open new doorways. But there will be a return to Jupiter and Gemini where we'll be looking for new alliances towards the end of December into January. Now, Venus is also at really, really low degree, but Venus travels much more quickly than Jupiter does. So we'll feel this strengthening of Venus over the next couple of weeks. So Venus is weak. You probably felt at least a little relief of pressure because of Venus moving into Libra. And I know I have. I actually feel calmer, much calmer or less stressed out. And the Mercury and Mars is weak, 4 degrees, 30 minutes. So within 6 degrees of the beginning of the sign is weak. Um, between 24, so there are 2 degree segments that are always weak. 0 degrees to 6 degrees, and roughly 24 to 30 degrees. So, and these are the avastas or the states of the planets. And those indications are always that the planet is either a baby or an old age. So it's essentially feeble or unable to protect itself. Mercury's in a little bit better shape, but it's really in the second weakest segment, and it's really not that far into it, the second weakest segment. The strongest segment is roughly between um, 12 and 18 degrees in a chart. So even Rahu and Ketu aren't particularly strong right now. Okay. The only planet which is strong by degree is the sun, and the sun is in what's called its debilitation sign. So this is when the sun starts to lose strength. So we changed last night to Eastern Standard Time if you're in the United States. And this is the demarcation point, the point at which fall comes in. If we use the tropical zodiac, when the sun enters Libra is when fall comes in. And fall is essentially the start of the decline of strength of the sun. Okay. So it'll keep on getting weaker and weaker until roughly December 23rd or January 15th, depending on which zodiac you use. If you use tropical, is around December 23rd. If you use sidereal, it's around January 15th. So, so the sun is weak. It's really at its point. It's in the west. It's a setting sun. So Libra is in the west. The seventh house, the natural seventh house, is in the west. That's when the sun sets. So a lot of optimism tends to go out. Now, this can be good for some things. Okay. So what happens when the sun sets? Well, basically, there'll be a little bit of a shift in terms of um, stubbornness. It'll weaken kings or rulers to a certain extent, but not really, not more so than K2 and Leo. K2 and Leo is a primary significant for that. And I've always found it interesting, at least in this country, that we hold our elections in November because that's the time when the sun is fallen in the sky in Vedic astrology anyway. And and essentially what happens is that's when we change rulers. That's when we change the people in power. So so this doesn't look good for a lot of incumbents. Again, I've said this again. This can make room for a candidate like Mamdani, who's not a typical politician. It can indicate a desire for change, but I'll probably look at Mamdani's chart a little bit later in this. Hold on one second. Okay, so as I was saying, this can give unexpected upsets um, at the polls, and actually, I'm not seeing any sudden reversals of trends. But I think the Mercury-Mars conjunction does open the doorway for what I would call underhanded election techniques. Also, so that could come from either side. That doesn't necessarily mean it's one party or the other. And the other thing, so behind the scenes rubbish being thrown at candidates. On the other side, you have a Saturn Moon conjunction here, which I discussed earlier. So that right now, this may be what's reflecting Mamdani's downturn in the polls in New York. Uh, it's also, I think, one of the things that happened this past week is because of people not being able to get jobs in their major fields of study, the Fed a- actually decided to cut interest rates. Now, again, it was a small cut because they're afraid of inflation, but the inflation rate hasn't been anywhere near what they projected it would be. It's around 3%, which is markedly lower than it was in 2022. And so we're still not seeing the full extent of what damage, if any, the Trump tariffs will cause. And but or else, let's say if there's a conflict in Venezuela. Uh, but I think overall we can expect a little bit of calming down and maybe some kind of attempt at a resolution of the budget crisis. But again, I'm not really expecting that particular dam to break until really towards the end of the month. I hope I'm wrong about that, by the way. And that's mainly because I'm seeing Saturn blocking a lot of progress in that particular area. Because we have um, Jupiter is strong, so that's going to put pressure on Saturn. Jupiter's aspecting Saturn, but Saturn's just slightly stronger than Jupiter is. So as I said, Jupiter is I used Jupiter for the Republicans and Saturn for the Democrats, not because Jupiter's a better planet, but basically because Jupiter's the younger represents the younger party, and Saturn represents the older party. Also, the Democratic Party started off as a populist party, a party connected with immigrants, a party connected with uh, um, agrarian life, and Jupiter was more connected with private ownership, the theoretical foundations of capitalism, and also the idea that essentially systems are Jupiter's a planet which believes in tradition, but also that systems are going to regulate themselves. So Jupiter is kind of a non-interference planet. It gives guidance, but it doesn't interfere directly. Um, Venus is a good friend of Saturn's, so and Venus is a good friend of Rahu and Ketu, and somewhat of Mercury. So again, these are all the planets which are more unconventionally minded or um, more reform minded. Jupiter is not really a reform minded planet. It's a traditional planet. Okay. So now Jupiter is aspecting Mercury and Mars in this chart. So that should give some more financial gains. It should give some more interest in improving the economy. You should actually start to see some investments improve over the next month or so. Employment, though, I think will probably be, if I take a quick look at the U.S. chart, one of the things that I dislike about the U.S. chart is this chart, United States. States chart, pretty simple, pretty easy to pull up. One of the things I dislike about the U.S. chart is that Jupiter is in the seventh house and it's influenced by all these other planets. It's pretty much the strongest planet, except for the sun in this particular sign. So you can see Jupiter's right in the middle of the sign. As I said before, that's really a strong planet. Um, Sun is marginally stronger just because although it's outside the range I gave you earlier, it's still the sun, and the sun tends to beat other planets. The strongest planets in the U.S. chart are Rahu and Ketu. because Rahu's smack dab in the middle of a sign, and Ketu's smack dab in the middle of the sign. So that gives us our urge for innovation, also gives us to a certain extent our ability at theft uh, or or greed, okay, to a certain extent. And Saturn's in the 10th house, so that tends to give the United States a need to dominate other countries. Okay, I need to dominate. And it's also kind of a perfectionist combination. So whenever you see anybody um, complaining that the United States isn't perfect, you can take that Mars Saturn mutual aspect to the bank that's what's causing it. Okay, because this expects everything to be true idealism, is so the United States, so you'll have it on both sides. The United States is an imperfect country. It's done horrible things. It should be punished for all the horrible things it's done. And you'll see the other side saying the United States is a perfect country. There's no other parallel in history to it. There's never been a better country, et cetera, et cetera. Both elements are true to a certain extent, okay? You don't have to choose one or the other. So the United States history is full with tons of atrocious acts. Okay, I'm fully aware of that, but it's also filled with a lot of opportunity. It's filled with a lot of greatness. So I don't have a problem with that either. I think if we're looking at societies and expecting them to be perfect, we're living in an unreal world. That's not how societies are. But again, that Mars Saturn aspect, we expect to be perfect in some way, shape, or form. So, and right now, the United States is in a Rahu Mercury subperiod, Rahu Mercury Saturn subperiod, so that will slow down the economy somewhat in terms of employment. But you may see a little bit of a boost in employment around November 26th and maybe even more after December 24th when the Venus subperiod comes in, because Venus is about the third strongest planet in this chart. It's not a particularly good planet for Sagittarius rising, which the United States is, but you should see some improvement in finances for the United States and some increasing international tension after January 17th to January 24th. January 24th to February 5th, you should see new demands, new innovations, new even scientific breakthroughs during that period. And Mars is February 5th through, I would say February 5th through March 7th, again, increasing tension internationally. The one that I'm really most interested in is this March 27th through April 18th period, because that starts the K2 subperiod. And K2 is usually when the United States has trouble with its population. So, so you may see more demonstrations, more riots, more lawlessness during this particular period in time. So let's go back to, but there was one thing I did want to mention, and that was the science in the scientific community. We go back to the chart I was looking at. The scientific community, there have been several adjustments in terms uh, of uh, of policy on vaccines, some led by RFK Jr., and also some adjustments in climate issues, and that was demonstrated just recently by Bill Gates coming out and saying that climate change is not as big a deal as we were led to believe after being told for years that it was a catastrophic, it had catastrophic implications. So I think one of the things that's happening is, so you could say, well, that's because the White House is influencing this particular person, but it could also be because of shifting priorities on the individual, as well. So it's always good not to take, especially proclamations by millionaires, as necessarily being in the best public interest. Okay, or by billionaires as necessarily being in the best public interest. I think that's something we should all be a little bit cautious about. But you know, so it's been an interesting week or so, just in terms of just those things that are happening. Um, Jupiter's aspecting the Mars-Mercury combination, so that'll cause some fights or some anger. Jupiter aspecting Mars Mercury will cause more demonstrations. That's for sure. Um, there is increasing interest in um, violence as a political solution uh, in the United States, which I'm a little bit worried about because we have that K2 sub-parade coming up. But we'll see what happens. It could just be But that's, but we did have a K2 Mahadasha in the late 1960s, which I keep falling back to as a reference point. This reminds me, the planetary combinations are remarkably like the late 1960s. So let's move over to Japan just for a second, because Japan's a big economy, right? And I think it's the largest economy in is it third or fourth largest economy in the world. Um, and I know West Germany is, or not West Germany, excuse me, Germany is up there as well. I think Germany's uh, among the top economies in the world. I don't have an exact list in front of me, but certainly have the U.S., China, um, and China are number one and number two. Japan, I think, is number three. I'm not sure about that. West Germany, or Germany, sorry, Germany's no longer West and East. Germany is, I believe, number four, and I think India is number five. Although I could have that wrong. These are big economies. These are huge economies. Um, the European Union looks like the largest economy in the world, but again, it's a union. It's not necessarily a political. It's not really a political entity as we understand it. Uh, so so essentially, Japan's. So this is one of the things that I find fascinating about Japan. Japan had a um, a lot of growth in the 1950s and 1960s. Now, if you go back to Japan's major, so that happened during a Saturn Mahadasha. Okay, so Saturn's in the second house of wealth. So this is remarkably similar to China, okay, in terms of the growth pattern, because uh, Japan grew during a Saturn. I'm sorry, China grew during a Saturn Mahadasha. And if you look back to when um, Japan started to slow down, it's been so 1989. It was in a Jupiter Mahadasha actually when it explosively expanded. So you go back to um, before 1989. That was the point at which we thought it was going to be the second largest, or maybe even surpass the United States in terms of the economy. Saturn Mahadasha, it kind of slowed down. It was stable, but it slowed down. In the 2000s, it was in a Mercury Mahadasha, so it's been huge. So it's essentially been what I would call sustained by its own weight. And that's exactly the situation that China is in right now. So China is a huge influencer, but is going through what's called a deflationary cycle right now. And that's almost, it's fairly similar to what happened with Japan because Japan had all these marketplaces tied up. So this may be boring to a few of you, but it's important to the United States. So that's why I'm doing this. So Saturn, Japan slows down a little bit, consolidates its growth. 2008, it's really in kind of a negative growth pattern. 2020 to 2022, it borrows and spends a great deal like the rest of the country, the rest of the world did in COVID. And over the past couple of years, it's been in a relatively rough shape financially. And again, we're saying relatively. This is Japan. This isn't, a country which is struggling to survive. Recently, they elected a female, their first female president, but she's apparently a Thatcherite. She's apparently a lot like Margaret Thatcher, uh, who was the prime minister in England in the 1980s. So Thatcher was very conservative. The current prime minister is a break from tradition. So that K2 in the first house makes perfect sense. And she'll start focusing on um, she internalizing um, Japan's wealth. So what's she doing? Well, she's expelling Muslims, or I think illegal Muslims. I don't think it's all Muslims, but illegal Muslims from the country. So so we have another country which is showing signs of being of trying to close itself off or be a little bit more insular uh, than it has been before. And the main reason, at least the reason I believe she got elected, was because of it wasn't because of any inherent hatred or um, bias on the Japanese, although I certainly can't rule that out, but it seems unlikely. It's mainly because K2, if you're going through losses, you have to tighten your belt. You can't be paying for other people's issues. So that K2 Mahadasha is usually when you give things up. It's when you decide to give up certain, maybe even certain benefits that you have, okay? And this K2 Mahadasha is going to last until 2032. Now let's roll over to China. So, and I do have a reason for why I'm going in this direction. We should have China. China again grew during a Jupiter Mahadasha. It started working its citizenry uh, mercilessly during during the Saturn Mahadasha, but it's in a Mercury Mahadasha. Now, it's been my experience that Mercury Mahadashas are incredibly unstable. And that's because Mercury changes signs every month. It goes into retrogrades, it conjoins with malefic planets. In this chart is in the 11th house of the chart. And this chart may be a little bit off, but it's in the 11th house of the chart. So it should bring some gains, but it'll bring gains through theft. Now, does that mean it'll try to grab more land? Possibly. Okay. So Japan is showing signs of wanting to consolidate or isolate itself a little bit more. China is showing signs of um, basically wanting to expand. And there's no other country in the world that has as many contested territorial claims that China does. So China is not necessarily our enemy, but definitely uh, a problem for that part of the world, for India, for Indonesia, for Singapore, for Japan. Okay, so so essentially that these are some of the astrological reasons I'm more focused on the East than the more obvious situations in Ukraine and Israel and Iran than a lot of other astrologers are. I can't speak for everybody, but I don't think this is unique to me, but I'm focusing on that part of the world much more strongly because there's much more economic um, potential for conflict in that part of the world than almost anywhere else. So we have this Mercury Mahadasha, and like I said, the current situation in China is it's going through a what's called a deflationary cycle, and that means prices are prices are lowering, uh, and and essentially it's partially connected with the Trump tariffs to a certain extent. It's also it's also a function that other countries in the Far East, like Indonesia, Vietnam, um, those countries are also becoming more and more competitive with China. So they're actually able to produce good products that can compete with Chinese products. And so they have to, China has to go into kind of a deflationary cycle in order to compete. So they have to lower their prices. India, it looks like, is in a Rahu Mahadasha right now. So they're in an eighth house Mahadasha. They entered it actually 2021. Now, there is a general rule of thumb that you don't see the full results of the Mahadasha until you hit the third level, and that'll be 2027 in India. Okay, January 9th, 2027 in India, and that'll be in the Rahu Saturn subperiod. So Saturn is in India's 10th house. So this will make India, I think, more territorial, more aggressive. So we're seeing a possible conflict coming between 2027 and 2030. And I think essentially it'll be a conflict between China and India or China, India, um, and Japan and South Korea to a certain extent involved in some kind of a conflict. Now, the reason that hits the United States is because we get a lot of our imports from those countries. So, so I think that I would look not necessarily to collapse in the United States, although that certainly is possible, but more towards problems with imports, making life more difficult, and not because of the tariffs, but because of um, national competition. Now, let me see if I put his chart in successfully. Now, I want to talk about the mayor's race, and then I'll get to your charts. There we go. There's Zoran. All right, so the mayor's race in New York. This is just a quick read. You know, this one we have to be careful with because we don't have Zoran's birth time. We don't have Mr. Mamdani's birth time. He does have a blessed, um, this is a noontime chart we're using. This was the chart that the page I went to. He does have kind of a blessed, um, Jupiter and Venus because they're both in Purva Falguni Nakshatra, which is considered to be. So we do know he comes from a relatively, his educational life was relatively strong. He didn't come from a poor background, as far as I understand it. And but he does have the typical Mars Mercury conjunction of a politician. And I think one of the things I've noticed when K2 transits over certain benefic planets is it tends to accentuate those benefic planets. So that probably gave him a boost in luck and a boost in the polls. I'm not going to say he's going to lose the election, but it'll be much tighter than he expects. And also, I expect him to be mayor for a relatively short period of time. I don't expect him to be mayor for very long. He's got a Moon Saturn conjunction in his chart, which makes him very appealing to people, makes him very likable. He's got Rahu in Sagittarius, which tends to make a person hungry for power or hungry for dominance. But again, there are politician combinations. If I were more blunt, I would say line competitions, but almost every politician has a combination like this. Um, One notable exception is Donald Trump, but Donald Trump has other combinations which are not particularly straightforward. Okay, but he's not. But Trump was never a professional politician. This guy, I think, was born to be a professional politician, and so he's relying a lot on ninth house. A lot of his support is coming from the New York immigrant community. And there are rumors the turnout is going to be very large for this election. So they could upset it. So if people who are opposed to him turn out in like vast numbers, uh, there could be an upset. There could be um, popularity, but I'm not. It's shifting, seems to be shifting quickly enough for it to really have an effect. I could be wrong about that, but it doesn't seem to be shifting quickly enough. So let's go on to so let's talk about you, all right, and what this week means for you, okay? All right, so that doesn't mean we won't have problems in the world between now and 2027. But 2027 looks like a kind of a pivotal year to me. Um, the chart for Aries, so this is April 15th to May 15th. The chart for Aries is indicates we have Mars in the eighth house. So again, there will be some arguments or fights with spouse, but you'll generally get along better with spouse this week than previously. And although there may be some misrepresentation on the part of spouse in terms of what they're buying or what they're keeping from you, Saturn's in the 12th house. Again, it tends to indicate a lot of bills. Jupiter's in the fourth house. Jupiter in the fourth house is very good for um, educational activity. K2's in the fifth house. Some problems with daughter or son, or even with creative activities. Creative activities is very positive but for children, for living beings, K2 in the fifth is not positive. So there can be some problems or disruptions with them, arguments with them. But and the Lord is weak. The Lord of the sign is weak. So again, look for a kind of a disruptive week for children. Rahu's in the 11th house. So some good potential financial gains, but not long lasting. You'll still have to watch out for your friends because your friends may be misrepresenting themselves to you or just hanging on to you to enrich themselves rather than help you out. So that's for Aries. For Taurus, Taurus lasts from May 15th to June 15th. And Taurus's lord or ruler is Venus. It's finally left the fifth house, which gives Taurus a certain amount of luck, but it gave weak luck. And this will give some obstacles with Sun and Venus in the sixth house. But basically, you'll find yourself getting more work done, focusing more on work, focusing more on material improvement. Mars and Mercury, a lot of fights with relationship partners, so just be aware of that. Also, not a good time for people with this particular sun rising or moon sign to get involved in new relationships. The same is true for Aries, by the way. So just chill out for at least another couple of months before a new relationship starts. For Jupiter's in the third house, K2's in the fourth house, and that can give some disruption in home life. But again, everybody will be polite and nice with each other. Saturn's in the 11th house, so again, a lot of pressure on the sign. Rahu's in the 10th house, a lot of focus on career. So career, relationship, and to a lesser extent, home life are going to be dramatically affected by this month for Taurus. For Gemini, Gemini has the Gati Lagna and the Sri Lagna in the first house. That's from June 15th to July 15th. Now, Gati Lagna and Sri Lagna aren't discussed a great deal by astrologers under conventional means, but they're essentially calculated points in space. And these are indicators of prosperity or career. So people born between June 15th and July 15th should see some career growth, some financial growth, some increased luck in terms of relationships. Case, who's in the third house, a lot more courage. Venus is in the fifth house, a lot more luck with legal matters and also with children. And Mars and Mercury are in the sixth house. This can mean some court activities or some governmental activities, but again, these are relatively lightweight things. Rahu's in the ninth, an increase in luck, an increase in financial growth. Saturn and Moon are in the 10th. A lot of notoriety, a lot of publicity connected with career. So this is actually a good point for Gemini rising sun or moon. For Cancer, this goes from July 15th through August 15th. Jupiter's in the first house. That's generally considered to be a good placement. It's the lord of the ninth house of luck. And Jupiter is exalted in the sign. Still a little bit weak, but it does give promise of growth and financial progress. K2's in the second house. You'll have to be careful with your money. Pay attention to where your money's going this month. Okay. Um, and let's see, so it may be going, you may be a little bit too charitable this month, giving away things you really shouldn't be giving away. Not just yet. There is a time in life for doing that, and that's certainly towards the end of life, but right now, not necessarily so. For the fourth house, Venus and Sun are in the fourth house. Again, some expenses connected with beautifying the home, but these really aren't unpleasant expenses. Some arguments or fights with love affairs or with children are indicated from this sign. Let's see now. Sixth house lord is Jupiter, is placed in the first house, so it makes this sign very competitive this month. Rahu's in the eighth house, some difficulty with um, people from other countries, and Saturn's in the ninth house. Slow but steady progress for this sign. Okay, so that's actually, so it'll give this sign a lot of work and a lot of financial growth, but it'll come with hard work. For Leo, Leo lasts from August 15th to September 15th. We have K2 in the first house. That can mean, so For people with Leo suns, rising, or moon signs, it can indicate a certain fearlessness in the chart. And so K2 tends to move forward without fear or without issue of um, feeling like it has limitations. Okay. So now, again, this can sometimes lead to recklessness, but oftentimes, if you trust your instincts, K2 will do good things for you. Okay. Um, K2 in Leo is actually K2's birthplace. So actually, it's almost like being in its own sign. So K2 in Aries or Leo is considered to be actually a good placement. It's best in Scorpio, but Leo and Aries, or Leo, Cancer, as a matter of fact, is fine for K2. But but essentially, like I said, it'll be a lack of fear of taking chances. So this sign will find itself more emboldened to do things like that. Sun and Venus are in the third house, indicates good ability to communicate with people, um, good diplomatic skills. Mars and Mercury, some problems with wife, especially over property, some disputes over property. Rahu's in the seventh house, wife will want to be more outgoing, more focused upon, more mysterious, more interested in foreign activity. Okay. Moon and Saturn are in the eighth house. Again, this can give this sign some opposition from people from other countries or people who are poor or people who are democratic, if I'm honest with you. Okay, that's one of the significations of it. And do we have any others? Jupiter's in the 12th house, good for saving money, good for financial growth. Okay. For Virgo, Virgo is um, Virgo's lord is Mercury. Mercury's so Virgo lasts, excuse me, from um, September 15th to October 15th. And Virgo has Mercury and Mars in the third house together. So there's a lot of ambition from this sign, a lot more interest in speaking to people, a lot more interest in going outside and socially interacting. The Sun-Venus conjunction is also very good for some financial gains from foreign countries. Uh, Ra Rahu's in the sixth house, gives some difficulty with short-term illnesses. Those won't go away for about a year, if I'm honest with you. Saturn and Moon are in the seventh house. Some disruption in relationship life indicated. This was felt more strongly over the past month than right now. And that's thankfully moved, but over the next couple of days, it'll still be there. That stress will still be there. Um, Ninth house lord is Mars. Mars is placed in the third house. So a lot of ambition for education, and a lot of ambition for career matters. Jupiter's in the 11th house. Some new gains, some new friendships. Ketu in the 12th, a lot of interest in spiritual activity. For Libra, Libra lasts from October 15th to November 15th, or you could even say a person who has a Libra rising sign or a Libra ascendant would be affected by these combinations. So the eighth house lord is in the first house. This can mean income from unexpected sources, and you may have to humble yourself in order to get it, but you will get it. Also, we have what's called a Dana Yoga with Mars and Mercury in the second house. So this increases luck, connected with property, but also connected with financial gains and also from wife or relationship partner. Rahu's in the fifth house. Rahu being in the fifth house is a good placement for creativity. There'll be a lot of interest in experimenting with creativity, following non-traditional pathways. And the sign will be actually very intelligent this month, but it'll seem a little bit unconventional or unusually oriented. Saturn and Moon are in the sixth house. If Saturn and Moon are in the sixth house for this particular rising sign, progress comes through hard work, especially connected with career, because Moon rules your house of career. Um, there are no planets in the seventh house, although the Mars-Mercury combination can mean that relationship partner will be lying to you a little bit. Jupiter's in the 10th house of career should bring increased career opportunities, which you'll see come to full fruition next summertime. Okay, so that's not a bad. And Kate, who's in the 11th house, unusual or spiritual friends, but you have to watch out for which friends you trust as well. Okay, so that's for Libra. Scorpio is from November 15th to December 15th. We have a Mars-Mercury conjunction. So this is another kind of a Dana Yoga or wealth-producing combination because you have the Lord of the first with the Lord of the 11th house of gains and friends. Siblings will be very strongly on your mind this month, this year, this week. And also, again, not a great time for new relationships or new relationship activities for this particular. Essentially, long-term business contracts or long-term relationships. Rahu's in the fourth house, makes the sign interested in expanding power or real estate or those kinds of activities. Saturn and Moon are in the fifth house, can give some difficulty with children. A lot of hard work is indicated for this sign. Um, and Jupiter sits in the ninth house, which is very good for career success. Jupiter aspects the first house, so this should be a fairly lucky month for Scorpio. And you should see some increased financial benefits and also some increased confidence. Kate, who is in the 10th house, a feeling of being unrecognized or underappreciated at work. Sun and Venus are in the 12th. That can indicate new potential saving opportunities, but the problem with that is Sun is a bit malefic for this chart. So career efforts to expand career life will be rewarded, but there is a chance that you won't be able to optimize those because of lack of confidence. So just try to show your confidence. Don't be afraid of new ventures, and you'll do fine. Um, for Sagittarius, Sagittarius has no planets in the first. Its Lord is in the eighth house. So unexpected gains from investments or from property are indicated. Saturn is in the fourth house. Increased prestige or esteem, especially from people from other countries. Moon um, is the eighth house. Lord is in the fourth house. So again, some increased financial benefit from investments. Rahu's in the third. A lot of courage, especially in dealing with travel and opportunities for travel. Jupiter's in the eighth house, good for longevity for this particular rising sign. So that should give some relief from some chronic conditions. K2's in the ninth house, unexpected burst of luck, especially from philanthropy or government, philanthropy or government. 11th house has Sun and Venus in it. That's good for financial growth. The Mars-Mercury conjunction can indicate some losses or some problems associated with real estate. Okay? So this is for Sagittarius. We're going to move on to Capricorn, which is January 15th. So Sagittarius was uh, December 15th through January 15th. Aquarius um, is I'm sorry, Capricorn is December 15th. No, Capricorn is January 15th through February 15th. Sorry, folks. And it has a lot of ambition. It has a lot of worry about its job, but it has a lot of ambition. Rahu's in the second house. A lot of anxiety about money, but that'll pass. Mars is in the 11th house, good for gains for real estate or real estate property. Sun and Venus are in the 10th house. That's a very good combination for the sign. So there should be some promotional opportunities or at least recognition from your boss. So that's a good combination. Jupiter's is in the 7th house, good for relationship life overall. So new relationships, new business partnerships are very good for this particular sign. The Saturn Moon conjunction in the 3rd house is actually pretty good for new partnerships. But again, get to know the person before you enter into a partnership. And that's about it. K2's in the 8th house. I'm sorry, I don't want to miss K2. K2's in the 8th house, can give unexpected boons or financial boons, but also unexpected financial losses for the sign. Sun and Venus, I've already spoken about. Mars and Mercury, I've already spoken about. So Sagittarius looks like it's in fairly good shape this month. For Cap, I'm sorry, Capricorn looks like it's in fairly good shape for this month. My apologies. Aquarius has Rahu in the 1st house. This isn't a bad placement. Rahu is a difficult planet by its very nature, but it isn't inherently evil, I don't think. And it can sign rather restless. It makes it rather difficult to focus on one thing, and its desires will jump from thing to thing. So this is for the planets between February 15th and March 15th, or Aquarius moon or Aquarius rising. So Aquarius has a month where it'll be a little bit jumpy. This will continue for about 6 months, a little bit scattershot, but it'll be interesting in a lot of different things and able to reap financial rewards from them as well. Saturn's in the 2nd house. It will slow down the speech of the sign. It will also, I think, increase its financial luck and increase its ability to overcome enemies. Jupiter's in the 6th house. Um, Indicates gain of money, but only through hard work. But you'll enjoy the hard work. K2's in the 7th house. That's an interesting placement. So you'll be attracted to unusual or unorthodox people as business partners. But you'll have to watch out for them. Check into their backgrounds before you enter a business deal because they could also be thieves. So you have to be careful about that. Venus is in the 9th house, very well placed for the sign. Mars and Mercury are in the 10th house. It forms a kind of a yoga called Ruchaka Yoga, which indicates the sign is ready to move. It's ready to move forward and fight for what it wants. So generally Aquarius has a decent chart this month. Um, and I think it will be for the next, we'll have for the next few weeks at least. Um, Finally, last but not least, we have Pisces. This is March 15th through April 15th. And we have that Saturn Moon conjunction in this chart. That's very good um, it's very good for spiritual life, somewhat good for gains, uh, but also it will tend to make this sign a little bit depressed or a little bit isolated feeling a little bit isolated. Moon is the 5th house lord in this chart. So this produces another kind of a wealth producing combination, but only through hard effort, only through hard activity. Um, we have Kulika and I'm sorry, Gati Lagna and Sri Lagna in the 4th house. So there should be some acquisition of wealth from home. Jupiter's in the 5th house will give plenty of opportunities for relationships. K2's in the 6th house. That's not a bad placement. As a matter of fact, it's good for overcoming bad habits and addictions. But you'll have to be careful not to overindulge if you don't want to give up your bad habits. Venus is in the 8th house along with Sun. Can make the sign seem very attractive sexually or very uh, magnetic to people. So that's actually a good placement. Mars and Mercury are in the ninth house. That's good for financial growth and for financial progress for this sign. And Rahu's in the 12th. Watch out for what you buy. It's a little bit tempting to buy things you don't need with this particular placement. Now we're going to move on to the time and space chart, which I do every week. Let me get this down. Open it up again. Okay, so let's see where the action is. Okay, so Mars and Mercury, so some political intrigue in southeastern Alaska and northwestern Canada. Interesting, okay. Um, Maybe even some problems with elections in those areas. Venus goes down into uh, British Columbia, it looks like, and and Vancouver, New Vancouver, and largely stays away from the west coast of the United States. There's a sun line running through um, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming. Is that Utah? Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, you're Utah, right? Um, Up through Idaho and Montana, and again, I've told you this before. Um, Parts of Oregon do want to merge with Utah, with not Utah, with Idaho. My apologies. And that's a long process, but I just think it's interesting that it's coming up right now when we're seeing this week. Um, we're seeing increasing pressure on centralized governments. Um, Sunline is weak. It's going through California, so there can be some disruptions in local government in Canada and up in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Let's see, and also in Mexico. The other combination of devious behavior is really showing up all the way from Wisconsin down through uh, Kansas, Nebraska, and down all the way into Texas and Louisiana and down close to Mexico City. So there may be um, some major lying, major political scandals going on down in those regions. We have, I need to move this over a little bit. We have a Rahu line going through the northeastern United States, pretty close to where I live. I know the last time we had that, I mean, there is a political scandal in Massachusetts right now. Uh, Somebody working for the state was found receiving large portions of cocaine to sell. So that's one political scandal. There are ongoing political scandals in Massachusetts, but I don't want to make this a Massachusetts-centric uh, broadcast. But suffices suffices it to say there are a few problems in Massachusetts right now. Um, Maine is having some problems as well. And so again, these will largely be political problems. And all the way down through Massachusetts, you see that's Cape Cod, that's very close to where I am. And so that usually a line this close to Maine and New Hampshire and Massachusetts will affect all of New England. So we can expect to see some dirty laundry come out over the next few weeks. But like I said, the cocaine bust was significant because it was a relatively, um, I don't want to say super important, but a relatively important administration official that got charged with possession with intent. Let's see, Haiti. is in that line as well. And so is Venezuela, and so is Peru and Ecuador. And there may even be some problems because a Saturn line passing over Venezuela, Guyana, and down into Brazil, down into Bolivia, down into Argentina. So this can indicate some financial problems for that part of the world. And the Rahu line, Rahu, I usually equate with uh, attempts to take over governments or attempts to cause panic. So that's actually fitting in terms of what's going on right now. There's a moon line running through Guyana, so that can give a change in governments. And let me just, and also a Saturn line. So that can indicate a shift in governments. Um, there's a Venus line running through the tip of Brazil, and it's hitting, it's intersecting with a sun line. So this can give some problems with the beauty industry in Brazil and also with high-ranking officials. Okay. Let's see now. There's a descending sun line, but it's not really intersecting with anything. Let's see now. There's a Mars-Mercury line. Wow, there's a lot of political scandals going on this month, huh? Okay. So Mars-Mercury line tends to indicate people lying about things, and at least from this chart, being shown up about it. Most all the answers has come back, and this is down into Chad and down into Mali and that region of Africa. So there can be some governmental disruptions there. There's nothing intersecting England right now, so they may or may not have a quiet month. It's between a Mars, Mercury, and so is Algeria. Sorry, Algeria and Libya, and most of Western Europe are stuck between Rahu and um, Mercury, with a little bit of Jupiter thrown in for good measure. But so what does that mean? Well, Rahu and Mercury usually indicate some scandal connected with communications or connected with commerce. So, so we're going to see this entire region of the world hung up in that. Okay, so so affect different countries differently. So Sweden will be connected. Germany will be connected. Parts of Greece and Macedonia, and all the way down into Al- Algeria and Libya. Okay, down through the Central African Republic, down to South Africa almost. And there's a lot of economic pressure in Eastern Europe right now, all the way down through Greece, down through Egypt, down through Sudan, and also uh, down into um, Southwest Africa. The other line I want to draw your attention to is a Jupiter line passing right through these areas. This usually indicates support for a more conservative government cycle, and it's passing through Saudi Arabia, so that will tend to keep their government in control. Um, there's a, move this little block down here. There's a Venus line running through Saudi Arabia, so there should be some financial growth. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and that should mean some financial growth, or at least the start of some. And let's see now, and there's a nice Venus line running through that, so everybody's going to be relatively nice and cordial. In terms of Ukraine, Ukraine has is stuck between Sun, I'm sorry, between Venus and Moon. So while this isn't a bad combination, it can tend to get Ukraine's allies confused because that's a very difficult um, combination. And the other thing is we have that Jupiter line does indicate some changes in economic structure all the way down here. We have a Venus line. Venus is relatively well placed for bringing some economic prosperity to Iran, and Sun is in this chart uh, is passing over Afghanistan and Pakistan, and again those do pose a threat to India. Okay, so any possible conflict could encompass this entire region. Okay. There's also a Mars-Mercury line, so there are land or property disputes in eastern India and also in China and to a certain extent in Russia. For um, we have a Saturn line and Rahu line sort of embracing Vietnam and China, so this can mean increased scandals coming out of that part of the world, and even some in Western Australia. There's a moon line running through China as well, so this indicates some pressure on it to make economic decisions pretty quickly. And let's see now, I need to look a little bit. So so basically, um, you should see some increased e economic tightening around China, Philippines, uh, all the way down into Australia. Okay. And last but not least, we have a Jupiter uh, Venus line, not really hitting any land mass except for Papua New Guinea, and so that'll actually be a relatively place to attend. But I think, at least from this chart, um, this does underscore the increase in competitions. All right, and let me just move on to the last point over here. We have a Venus Jupiter line. This can indicate extreme problems with hurricanes or with water sprouts, and excuse me, and also if we look carefully at the map, there can be an effort. All right, so that's it for this week. I'm going to sign off and say thank you very much for watching. In case you may be able to tell I'm a little bit tired right now, but I'd like you to ask me any questions you would like. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. I may have to do some research. Maybe you send me new topics, but I'll be happy to do that. I am going to be making some shorter form videos pretty soon. And again, if you're interested in studying as a class, please let me know. I think I can accommodate you over the next few months. And but I need more than one or two people in order to do that and make it financially feasible. So, and it's not a matter of greed, it's just a matter of the amount of work that has to be put in along with the hours I have to put in order to make it work. Okay. So, but thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment, ring the bell so you can be notified the next time I'm on your wonderful screen. I love you all. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. We can at least breathe a little sigh of relief that Venus is in its own sign and Mars is in its own sign and Jupiter's also in its own sign right now. So this is a marked improvement from where we were last week. Okay? All right, folks. You take care. Have a great week. And again, I love you all and thank you so much for watching. Stay, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. See you next week.